This is your government video on criticisms of the bureaucracy. The word bureaucracy or bureaucrat is often associated with lots of money and spending in wasteful government projects and over-regulating of the private sector and of citizens. So there's lots of ways and reasons why people criticize the size of the federal government. One, they see that it's inefficient. We've talked before about federalism and how sometimes we have a department of the federal government and a department of the state government both doing the same thing. Well, if we're paying tax dollars to a state government and a federal government to do the same thing, sometimes that's inefficient and therefore wasteful spending. Anytime government agencies are working with tax dollars, which is all of the time, taxpayers often think that it's a waste of their money. Sometimes people don't agree with areas of the government which the Congress has passed laws, and sometimes they disagree that they should be spending that much taxpayer dollars on this particular project or program. The size of the federal government has also gotten very large over time, particularly in the last 100 years. So there are some people who believe that the federal government should be much smaller and that the bulk of government should be done by state and local governments. Certainly, there's lots of federal government restrictions and regulations that are placed on the private sector, private companies and businesses. Many people believe that this is inappropriate because if you have a free market, they believe there should be very little regulation and you should let the private sector deal with business regulations and the economy on its own. Otherwise, it becomes dependent upon the government, and therefore it's the same or similar to if the government was running the free market as opposed to businesses. People who believe that there are too many employees in the federal government who have too much power also say it's very, very difficult to fire a federal government employee, and it's also hard to motivate them. In the private sector, you can give people raises, you can give them bonuses, you can give them stock options and things to help incentivize them with money to work harder. Well, when you're paying somebody with taxpayer dollars, taxpayers generally don't want to give people large raises or monetary incentives. So how do you employ people and therefore encourage them to work harder and harder if you can't encourage them with money the way that they would be if they worked for a private business? Some people don't like the size of the federal government and what they do because once government is involved, it typically stays that way. That is what people perceive of as a permanent government, and therefore when we create agencies and departments of the government, they tend to stick around and actually get larger and larger over time. For active learning number 9, you're going to start to interpret some charts and graphs. So here are 2 questions. I want you to look at the charts that are on your guided notes and answer both of these questions in reference to each graph.